Hi everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, and today I wanted to do a quick video all about making floating flower arrangements. Now I had a question from somebody about how to harvest the hellebore flowers, and that was my motivation for making a video today because I've got a head cold, I don't feel great, it's really gross weather outside, but it's sort of the perfect scenario to show you how simple this process is. Often I make these flower arrangements just because I'm running out to my compost bin to drop off kitchen scraps and I see, some hellebores or some camellias in bloom, and I basically harvest them in my compost bucket, and that's actually what inspires making the combination. So I'm standing here in my dining room where I have this awesome bowl full of Edgeworthia flowers. This is really like the first big Edgeworthia combination that I've done this year. And it's starting to get kind of past its prime. It's not fragrant anymore. It's been in here probably 5 or 6 days. And the flowers are starting to sort of decompose. The water is getting cloudy. And yeah, my cats absolutely love drinking out of these, both indoors and out. So I do try to keep the water fresh because I know that, they are being utilized by my four-legged friends. So the process for doing this is so easy. You can basically use any vessel you want. This happens to be my Christmas present to myself. I found a beautiful Tiffany bowl on Facebook Marketplace at an incredible deal. And so I bought it and I've been using it as the centerpiece in the dining room basically since January began. You can also do these outside, and I really like my outdoor arrangements because they last a lot longer. The warmer the temperatures, the faster the plant material decomposes. So this is also something that I primarily only do in the cool season. And that's because in the summertime here in North Carolina, I would have to redo these every day. And that's just not a task that I want to take on. And I use my outdoor vessels that have no drainage holes to grow rice in. So I only do this in the winter. And again, outside lasts a lot longer. And it's actually even fine if it freezes, because then the flowers actually freeze in the ice and it looks really cool. But again, the colder temperatures make the plant material last significantly longer, often like 10 to 12 days. Whereas inside you're looking at, maybe 5 days at the most, just because the heat of the house makes the plant material decompose. All right, I'm rambling. I'm sorry, I'm on Dayquil. Let's go outside and I'll show you my technique for harvesting the blooms. So now I have an empty bowl. I just dumped my kitchen scraps into my compost pile right there. And right here at the compost pile, I have a bunch of different plants. I've got an Edgeworthia that absolutely has some flowers that could be harvested. I've got a number of different types of hellebores. Behind me here, I have camellias, and of course you can also harvest foliage of any kind. Really, the sky is the limit for floating flower arrangements. I've done some that are just foliage and they're really beautiful, but at this time of year here in my garden in Zone 7, Central North Carolina, I actually have a lot of things that are in flower. So let me show you my really simple, no pruners needed method for harvesting the flowers. So right here we have some hellebores that I haven't cut the foliage back on yet, but you can see these blooms are totally open, and you see how they have just like a little stalk. You literally are just gonna pinch that off. And so then you're left with the bloom. So now I can repeat that several, 20 times. Here's another great example. This is a nice double form. Oh, it's so pretty. So you see where that flower is nodding? That's the part that you just literally just break right off. You don't really need pruners, especially to do hellebores. Now that same method applies for Edgeworthias. Literally, see that? And just like that, I'm breaking it off. Now with Edgeworthia, I always recommend getting them when they already have at least a few flowers open. because that will trigger the rest of the blooms to completely open. Like if you get one that, I don't even have any examples now because we've been so mild that all the plants are ahead of schedule. But if you get one that hasn't started to initiate flowers, it likely won't open. So you can see just like that little stalk that attaches the flower to the stem, all you're doing is just literally pinching that off with your nail. Of course, you can use pruners or scissors. I'm generally not coordinated enough to have that stuff on me when I'm out here gathering material. So camellias can be a little bit trickier because if you don't get the flower completely off at the base, it'll actually fall apart. So if you see here where I'm just doing a little twist, you need to get the entire base. If you don't get this kind of brownish part, all the petals will fall off. This is a really great one called Crimson Candles, and you can see it's really in full bloom as we start February off. And it's a great source for flowers to put into a floating arrangement. So one of the reasons I like making floating flower arrangements so much is because I get to put these flowers, in areas that I see every time I walk in and out of my house or sit down at my dining room table. I enjoy the blooms a lot more bringing them in this application rather than leaving them on the plant. Another good reason to do this is to prevent excessive seeding, and that's particularly relevant for hellebores. Helleborus orientalis or hybridus, however you want to call it, can have a slightly invasive habit, and I don't want them to become a problem in my garden. So it's just been my habit to basically harvest every single bloom so I can enjoy them, and I don't resent the plant's habit of seeding because they don't have the opportunity to seed if you remove the flowers. And as you can see here, I've got a whole bunch of hellebore flowers to harvest. So this is a great example. Again, I'm just kind of cutting it with my fingernail right where the flower has that kind of arching stalk. And I'm just gonna come through and harvest all of the flowers that are fully open. I generally don't harvest them at this stage because they don't float very well. I like to wait until the petals have opened more. Well, as you can see, I went ahead and took this opportunity to put a red tablecloth on in early celebration of Valentine's Day. And now I have my floating flowers, or my flowers that I just collected from the garden. And I put fresh cold water into my bowl. And you can see here, just to make it look extra special, I'm just putting a single candlestick in the middle. At this time of year, it's dark so early. I love lighting candles. It reminds me of when I visited Denmark. So I like to just make the dining room look a little extra special. Now I am doing a kind of diverse collection of plants. I've got camellias that I collected from the wood's edge. And of course I've got hellebores that are really one of the primary elements at this time of year. And I also have fragrant edgeworthias, and you don't even need a ton of the edgeworthia to bring out that incredible scent. So I highly recommend, if you have an edgeworthia in your home garden, to at least do this one time. I promise you won't be disappointed. It's really just such an extraordinary fragrance, and it really does fill the entire house. It's great when you leave and you walk back in and you're hit with that honey scent. And of course, this is like the easiest and also least messy way to make a flower arrangement. Traditional arrangements, particularly with flowers, the petals fall off and you just tend to have kind of a bigger mess. Everything is contained when you keep it in a bowl. And that's definitely one of the reasons that I love this method. Now, it looks like I harvested more than I actually have room for, but I'm just gonna go ahead and keep putting these in as tight as possible so that you don't really see any open water. And again, the sky is the limit. There are no rules for making a floating arrangement. You can use leaves, you can use twigs, flowers, whatever you have, whatever inspires you. And as I mentioned earlier, the indoor arrangements don't last that long, but you'll get a good couple of days of enjoyment. But outside is where you really will get better longevity during the cool season. Now, you might be wondering, what about daffodils? Can I float daffodils? And you can. However, remember that daffodils contain a poison called licarin. And basically, if you include a daffodil in a mixed arrangement, all of the other plants are going to die. So I don't usually use daffodils in floating arrangements until I have enough daffodils to do a big kind of monoculture display. I never mix daffodils with any other plants, but I can include this here on my tablescape by just putting it in a single vase and placing it behind this beautiful floating bowl. And just like that, I think we are ready for a dinner party. Of course, I'm not inviting anyone over because I am sick. I don't want to spread my germs. However, this dining room arrangement definitely brings me a great deal of happiness. And that's really what gardening is all about. At this time of year, there is nothing wrong with bringing the outside in so that you can maximize your enjoyment. Now, as I mentioned, outdoor floating arrangements last a lot longer, but I always recommend putting them in an area where you're going to walk past so that you really notice and enjoy them. And in my case, I have them right here off of the steps from my kitchen, which I come in and out of many different times a day. And I made these arrangements yesterday. Though they have gotten rained on, they still look fresh and beautiful. They're super colorful. And, well, I just think that floating arrangements are probably the thing that bring me the most happiness through the winter season. This is not my favorite time of year, but being able to come out and enjoy the garden in this context has definitely made coping with the winter a little bit easier. So I hope that you'll be inspired by that as well. As always, thanks so much for watching, everybody.